I can't see anything. My internet just decided to. Welcome to Thrill, New Jersey. I can see myself talking. I can't see anyone else. If you guys, if you guys can hear me,
yeah, no,
we have three people on the screen.
We can hear you now.
I can't see three people on the screen, but if you obviously you know who Cliffy is, the dashing fellow in the middle. Now Cliffy, I can see Cliffy. Can you guys hear me okay, or is that just awful?
I mean, we hear you fine. Can't see you too well.
It's like Bigfoot.
Okay. Let me unplug this.
All right. I guess while Josh figures that out, I'll introduce our guest. We have Matt Moody here. We've talked about the morning skate pod here before, some of the work that they do over there. A lot of best puck drafts beforehand. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes, GA notes in the chat here. It makes me feel right at home to be on this show because my co-host DJ is notoriously on bad internet constantly. So having to navigate that. Now, it's interesting that Josh is the host. That makes it a bit trickier. But I often need to pull the mic away from DJ just to say, hey, we can't hear you. Let's get into things. So, but yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
I think you can talk now, Josh.
Can you guys hear? I can't hear you. Damn.
No, right now. Oh, okay. Yeah. We can hear you fine.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me do this here. You can hear me.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? I think I fixed it. Our draft is starting. Moods has the top pick. I have the sixth
pick. Let's go.
Cliffy has the fifth pick. So
yeah, there is
my Ethernet, and that's all.
Moods, what do you think about the debate between McDavid and McKinnon first overall?
I take Austin Matthews first. I think that goals and shots are just so important that I don't know if McKinnon can replicate what he did last year. Obviously, McDavid's an alien. I understand that, but the way he gets fantasy points is not as, I guess, replicable as Matthews. Like, I think Matthews got unlucky last year and was still, an unbelievable, 70 goal type guy. I don't know. I've even seen my buddy Jay over at Puck Luck. He does season-long projections, and he has Austin Matthews, number one. I totally understand the people who bristle at that idea, but at the end of the day, I'm hunting goals, I'm hunting shots, and so I tend to value Matthews over those two, just in general. And so, if I'm on here, I'm going to draft that way. Because, some Morning Skate Pod guys are here, and they know, they're already calling me out for it. So I'm not going to let them down.
I mean, fair enough. I probably should have included Matthews in there because he's definitely in that top three grouping. I don't know. Like, I think this is going to be a big season, I think, for him and Marner.
Yeah. And you're also talking to the guy. If you mentioned the manifesto stuff, but if you read my newsletter last year, I was a full fader of Nathan McKinnon. I had like three shares in 150 drafts. And, I still finished third in the contest. So it worked out okay for me in the end, but I've been wrong before. And, I'm more than happy to go down with my takes. But that's one that I feel pretty decent about.
I mean, I question Matthews going 1 in our other draft, and it wasn't because I was shocked that Matthews went 1. I wanted to know why, and that was a good answer.
So Austin Matthews, he's not going to generate the sort of rebound assists that McKinnon will, and he's not going to generate the alien assists that McDavid will. And I totally get that, but I do think last year was this really bad confluence of, Marner's game was, I mean, it wasn't as bad as everyone's making it out to be, because obviously, the playoffs, but like he just wasn't scoring the way that I think, you would expect. There's also a chance that William Nylander doesn't get completely isolated from Matthews at 5-on-5 all year. Now, early returns, that's not going to be the case, but it does feel like there's a world where Matthews plays with better scorers that would, tend to elevate his secondary assists in the way that last year he got none. I want to say it was less than 20 versus McKinnon and McDavid were, closer to the 50 range. So, I will admit they're going to project better in that respect normally. But yeah, that's my argument. But I've also not gotten many 1 through 3 picks. I think I'm at 40 drafts and I have 5 top 3 selections, and all of them are Matthews. So, I'll balance that out if I get luckier down the stretch here.
Yeah, I think just having Matthew Nyes on the that's what they decide to do could be a big difference, because I'm pretty big on Nyes this season. And, Bertuzzi really didn't do a whole lot on that wing last year, right?
Yeah, no, that's that's another valid point. I'm almost more interested if Max Domi sticks. It does seem like they're going to try to use him with Nylander for some offense there. But that Matthews, Domi, Bertuzzi was so good last year. And it's just because Tyler Bertuzzi couldn't score to save his goddamn life that, I think that was another issue, that they were dominating the expecteds and it was just Matthews scoring or nobody. And that just shouldn't be the case for a team as talented as Toronto.
It was also weird, the Domi line with Matthews wasn't as bad defensively as I thought they would be. They weren't the black hole that I thought a Domi line was going to be. Matthews carried them.
No, and I think Matthews is, it's sort of cliche at this point, but Austin Matthews nearly scored 70 goals last year and was a Selke finalist and wasn't even in the MVP discussion. His season last year was unbelievable,
which is
just
ridiculous, by the way.
It's one of the craziest things. As far as awards go, that's one of the craziest things I can remember. Scoring nearly 70 goals, being a Selke finalist, and nowhere near the MVP conversation.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of ways that he could truly elevate off of last year versus obviously McDavid can too, but I don't see a world where McKinnon, gets better than last year. And so, McKinnon was the best last year. There's no doubting that. I just try to sort of, I've always been a McKinnon doubter because I think Rantanen and Makar are just better scorers than McKinnon. And I don't want an assist guy. If I'm taking the guy, I want the goals.
Yeah, if McKinnon ever shot 14% in the season, he'd have 110 goals.
Yeah, that muffin of his.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel he's a little bit later in the draft, but I felt the same way about Joel Eriksson Ek. Once that guy has a season where he shoots 15%, he just locks out, he's going to be a top 20 player in fantasy.
All right.
We got moods on the turn here. Saros.
Yep, and I believe. Are you guys Stamkos guys? I cannot believe his ADP is holding here. I don't understand it.
I'm not a Stamkos guy.
I am not a Stamkos guy.
I don't know who is keeping it afloat, but I thank them because I don't think I would take him in the 5th round, to be honest.
He's going to have issues 5-on-5, more so than last year. And he was awful 5-on-5 last year.
Yeah, I don't think he gets insulated with O'Reilly Forsberg. I don't think the power play role is going to be as I mean, it's not a, far be it for me to say that not having Nikita Kucherov feeding you pucks is bad for your power play outlook, but like this team already has Philip Forsberg. They do not need help with a right-handed scorer on the power play. I don't understand their offseason. Like I get you just acquire, I guess, talent to try and, build on the last 2 months of last year where they genuinely had some of the best expected goals numbers that in the entire league as a team. You just need some talent to finish. I get from that perspective where it comes to play. But I just struggle to see that how the power play gets, more successful, how Stamkos in particular benefits from this move. Like it just feels like a total loss, and he's moved way up the board as a result. I don't follow.
I'm wondering where Stamkos' ice time is going to land too, right? Because Forsberg played. I'm looking at it right now. 1854 last year, and Stamkos was 1814 in Tampa Bay. Like he's not going to get Philip Forsberg. Forsberg didn't play 19 minutes, and if he's at the top of the food chain, don't know how much Stamkos is going to get. Like 18 might be tops.
Yeah, especially because they're obviously not going to use him in late game, hold the fort type situations. So the Ryan O'Reilly role, that's not going to be there. It's really tough, I think, to project him above even like a Matt Boldy. That's just sort of where I think even after that, I would be like, do I want Jesper Bratt or Carter Verhaeghe over Stamkos? Probably. And so I just don't understand how his ADPs stayed all offseason at this 2-3 turn.
Just name value. It has to be.
I mean, he still had
he's going to a new
goals
spot.
in 3 shots per game last year.
That was mostly on the power play, though.
Yeah. 39 power play points.
Yeah. Kucherov had 53, I think. Like, just otherworldly.
The all-in falling at 36 feels like the latest I've seen him go, just off the top of my head.
Just reaction to the news today. I mean, it could be nothing. It's the first day of camp, and he cramped or tweaked a muscle or something. It is, Lindy Ruff though, so who knows? Maybe they were bag skating him right out of the gate.
He did say he threw a pass and then felt it, so it feels like an oblique thing or something. I'm personally not worried about it, but it does feel very Buffalo too. Spend all off season, oh my God, Lindy's back. I could cry. Just seeing Lindy Ruff. I'm of the age where growing up, the last playoff game that the Sabres played in was before I graduated from high school. So that run when they were good was all of my formative, middle school, high school, hockey years. And I just loved it. And so seeing Lindy there was just the foundation. He is the Sabres. And then just having him return on day one, Rasmus Dahlin goes down, just feels like, yep, that's Buffalo.
I saw the quote, Steve Vasilevsky went 39th. I saw the quote today. That guy's playing 60 games this year if he stays healthy. Because I think he said he's ready to play 60 to 70 games.
I worry that the front office is too smart to do that, right? They're not going to tell Cooper, hey, because at the end of the day, this team is still trying to win the Stanley Cup. They're not worried about Vasilevsky's Hall of Fame. They still want to win the cup, with the team they've got. So I'm a little suspicious that, I think 60 is his max. He can talk all he wants, but I don't think he's getting the 7 out of every 8 starts that he got to end last year because he was injured for the first 4 months.
That was so crazy, though, coming off back surgery, just right onto the ice and never leaving. But I guess that's what happens when you have Jonas Johansson.
That's my only thing is like there's just no one in the organization that I would trust with even 20 games. And like maybe they're just not that good next year, right? Like this is not the team that of 5 years ago that's expected to be at the top of the standings. Like if they're hovering around the wild card all season long, I don't think they're going to start giving away games by starting Johansson. That's the one thing I'm worried about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do suppose that's right. And honestly, at the end of the day, what's most important is that stretch run. Like, we can talk all we want about season-long projection, but like on Underdog, the game is survive, finish top 2 in your pod, and then when you get to the playoffs, keep advancing in 2-week sprints, and ultimately in the final, it's beat 99 other teams. So he certainly does have that within week upside, and trust me, I love Vasilevsky in this format. Like I would happily take him over like a Jeremy Swayman, for example, who I think goes before him these days.
Oh, I took him before Vasi in this draft.
Yeah, and that's just because we've seen it out of Tampa. They're gonna ride a goalie. I have no confidence that Boston's gonna want to take their shiny new toy that they just gave a bunch of money to and ground him into dust if he hasn't shown he can handle that sort of workload yet. We saw this with Georgiev last year. 2 years ago, they rode him for 65 starts or so. Last year, he fell apart. Like, I mean, Swayman's a different level of prospect than Georgiev ever was, but like this is goaltending in 2024. And so I think, betting on goaltenders' workload, it's not as simple as, oh, this guy's good, so he's going to play a bunch. I think teams are very protective of goaltenders nowadays, given what the position demands.
I know I forget who it was. I was reading someone in the offseason. They said that they want to start giving goalies, like, I think it was morning skates off and then just have them practice between games so that they're not even, maybe they show up to the rink in the morning, but they're not going on the ice.
Yeah, so I've seen a couple things that are interesting about goalies, and one of them was actually a response to Devin Levi last year, talking about how the Sabres might use him. Obviously, he was not that good, so those plans kind of got scuttled right away, and UPL took over. But there was a lot of talk about actually the college schedule is ideal for goalies because they get basically 3 days completely off, no practice, no whatever. And then they start 3 nights in a row. Devin Levi at Northeastern was their guy. So he started Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like that was just what he did. And somehow that's better, on the body. And so there was talk that like the Sabres might try and do something like that where he starts, both ends of a back-to-back or, Friday, Sunday type 2-mans, like that sort of rather than staggering his starts. I found that interesting. I don't think we've seen that anywhere in the league. What we have started to see, though, is I think teams like Carolina are going to start doing this more and more, but actually like sending their goalies ahead to, say, on a back-to-back, like carrying 3 goalies just so that they can travel, like, their back-to-back goalie. You don't go with the team on Friday night. You fly to where you're playing on Saturday. I could see that becoming more in vogue, especially now that the Nerds truly run the show in Carolina.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty scared of the Kochetkov, Freddie situation because I do think that if there's a viable third goalie in the system, and who knows if one sticks around or elevates or can survive training camp, but I do think they might use that more than the current projections might like, and especially in a weekly format like Underdog where you're getting the best score per week. I don't know that you're getting any 3-start weeks out of a Carolina goalie specifically. And, some other teams, I also worry a little bit about that transpiring as well.
Cliffy passing on the moose on skates, Slavkovsky there.
I just have Konechny rated pretty highly this year. I actually just finished my point projections today for forwards. Like, I have Konechny like a top 20 forward. 6 points for a goal, four an assist, or top 20 winger, sorry. And that's without the power play being very good. Like, if Michkov can actually turn around that power play and make it, all he has to do, just make the top unit average, right? It's like, don't be absolute dog water of a top unit. Like, that's all I'm asking for. That, like, I'm not asking for a lot here. I don't know. I really think Konechny's, this is going to be the season when people really notice, because like it's been a couple of years now where he's I think been one of the more underrated wingers in the league, and he's just done nothing but get better and better. And I think like this is like he has like a 40-40 type season in him. It's just a matter of that power play, honestly, just not looking like a bunch of under 14 skaters out there.
Wow. Their coach is just a lovely power play coach, so not as bad as Steve Ott, but
well, would you know that John Tortorella consulted great minds like Danny Heatley in the offseason to get input on the power play? I read that earlier today. So hopefully you didn't get any driving tips from him.
I'm sure Michkov, he tried the lacrosse goal. He's probably already back on the plane to Russia.
I'm burying the lead because I spent literally all day in the Morning Skate Pod Discord prepping for this exact moment, but I'm pretty bullish on Michkov. I'm not worried about Tortorella at all. I think Tortorella elevates him in a way that I don't think a lot of other coaches would, because, and it's combined with the team. What this team has is structure and opportunities. I mean, this team was not bereft of opportunities last year. They were bereft of talent. Like, they were just so bad across the board at finishing their chances and stopping those chances. And Michkov is quite literally a prospect we've never seen enter the league at his age. Like, obviously, we've had guys like Bedard and McDavid come in at their, at age 18. He's a year older than that. He's been playing in professionals for 2 years. His numbers as a professional in those leagues at his age, I can't find any comps. Like, the magnitude that he was more productive in those leagues than like his current age, type guys. It is unbelievable. Like, it dwarfs guys like Jack Hughes and Connor Bedard, who were dominant in their respective leagues, but it's just because it's a professional league. It's so much harder. I think that if last year, we did not know Michkov was coming over this year. And two, the war, the whole, everyone knows the war. If those two things weren't the case, I think we would have gotten breathless updates every time Michkov did anything. And he would be so much more hyped than he is right now. Because like, I truly do think he's like transcendent. Maybe I'm wrong, but man.
No, I mean, Cliffy and I talked about it too. Like we said, if people knew he was coming over, he would have been the number 2 pick behind Bedard.
For sure. There were people I respect saying that there was a case for him at number 1, and that's a little bit of a reach, but it really is fascinating that those two players, given they're not the fastest, that they're not that impressive, except their shots are magnificent and just their hockey sense. Like, those two guys are going to be fascinating to see sort of build throughout their NHL careers, because they're not McDavid, they're not the size of Matthews, but they could be every bit as impactful, I think, on the offensive end as those two guys.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Tortorella point too. Like, I don't think he's just going to bury him like out of the gate or anything like that. And when I did my projections, it came out to just over 17 minutes, which might not sound like a lot, but last year over 17 minutes would have been the number 3, number 4 forward on the team. I think that's about where he slots in. And I don't know if he can get much higher, right? Just because I think Konechny's ahead of him on the depth chart, but like 17 to 18 minutes, that's enough for a 60-point season. Again, I'm just worried. It's just the power play. right? Like, and he has to be the driving force behind it. Like, there is a lot of pressure on him in that sense.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing is that he really didn't have much power play production in the KHL. So, it's fair to assume that he's going to run the half wall. But, I think that it's maybe even a bit, I should say, I think it's a net equal, but it's interesting that like his production doesn't come through the power play, yet his talent seems like that's exactly where it would come from. But he was so good at 5-on-5 offensively that like you would think it translates, having guys like Tippett and Konechny who can actually score goals at the NHL level to play with. He had nobody in Sochi of the past two. He wasn't playing with the Datsuks, the Kovalchuks that are over there. Just he was playing with literal nobodies. And still sort of dragging that team to relevance, getting assists in a way that, people weren't expecting, I guess, from him. So I'm pretty stoked. But that's the thing, though.
If Couturier is like 85% healthy, I just don't know. But
I would say more
a little bit weak down the middle, but
yeah,
that's okay.
Morgan Frost played his way out of the doghouse. It's not as barren, I think. As soon as you get that guy in there.
I will say that's the one thing that worries me is like if Couturier finds his way into the doghouse, let's say the top line is something like Forster, Frost, Konechny, then who's Mitchkov's center? Is it Ryan Poehling? You know what I mean? Is it Scott Lawton? Like it's kind of tough sledding if Couturier doesn't find his game again.
That's true. I think my stance going into the year is that Frost and Tippett are going to be glued at the hip for most of the year. They were really good down the stretch. Again, Frost really earned his way out of the doghouse.
So like Frost, Tippett, Mitchkov?
Yeah, that's what I'm projecting, because I think that also allows Couturier to transition more into that, lockdown type role. And obviously he's been that his whole career, but not having much offensive responsibility, I think would do wonders for him. And then Konechny obviously can elevate him to, a passable level. So yeah, you need to project it a little bit. Another point is that Jamie Drysdale should be a quality power play quarterback. I mean, I like Cam York. He's not it. Travis Sanheim certainly isn't it. Remember Igor Zamula? That guy was running the point at the end of the year. He's certainly not it. So, yeah, it takes projection just to keep Drysdale healthy. But, there is a chance that this power play just, switches overnight to being, actually loaded with talent. Because, I have all the time for Tippett in particular as that sort of, finisher.
Pull up Josh's team here real quick. Of course, he took Zibanejad.
That's my first advantage out of the season.
And Fox, of course, another Ranger stack.
First advantage out of the season. I don't know what I'm doing here. Let me get some.
You're going to auto pick is what you're doing. Oh, Batherson. I like it.
That was my first bet. I wanted to get Hedman for my Tampa Bay stack, but he went 2 picks before me, so I got Fox. And it's like, you know what? I'll just grab a Rangers center while I'm at it.
What's your take on Ottawa moods? Like, where do you think? Like, do you see Stützle with a big rebound? Do you think Batherson is like the top 75 fantasy player he can be? Like, what do you see there?
So my main concern with Stützle is that I know you guys are on the opposite end of this, but I think it's undeniable that Josh Norris has a role on this Ottawa Senators team.
Yeah,
and so
it's on the injured list.
Yeah, but when he plays, I'm not convinced that Stützle is going to be the focal point of this team the way that prospect guys and whatnot just go he could be a top 10 player in the world. I personally don't really see it with Stützle. I get he's good. I will concede that. I think the 90-point season was ultimately, obviously a good thing, but I think it was sort of like this thing that I don't know if he'll ever recreate, especially glued at the hip of Brady Tkachuk, who's just not an efficient player. So it's fine for fantasy to be playing with Brady Tkachuk, but you're really betting on something we've never seen from him to get Stützle up to truly elite fantasy levels. And that sort of trickles down into, am I that interested in Drake Batherson before guys like Bushnevich, Michkov, guys I can get 30, 40 spots later? I'm not that interested in him, mostly because goalie dries up right around the same time in my eyes. And then down from there, Jake Sanderson, sure, he's fine, but there's a lot of D that go around him that I'm perfectly okay with too. So it really just sort of dries up for me until you get to the end of drafts and you're like, well, maybe I'll click on a Shane Pinto or Josh Norris just in case they're the center that's with Brady. Because for those guys, their ADP, their upside case is not, oh, he needs to have a 90-point season to really be meaningful. It's, he just needs to have a solid couple weeks here and there once you get into that last round. So that's most of my Ottawa exposure. It's just in that last round. Maybe a Giroux too. Obviously, it's rare to get power play 20-minute ice time guys that late in drafts. But ultimately, I think I'm pretty low on them, relatively speaking. And I have no Brady. I don't think Brady belongs ahead of Kaprizov, Rantanen, those guys. It's a ceiling game in this format, not a accumulation game.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, I think there should be concerns around Ottawa. Like, I think your point about the centers is the best point, right? Like, you have Stützle, you have Pinto, you have Norris. They clearly like Norris because they just can't stop using him whenever he's actually in the lineup. It is a very valid point.
I mean, I don't know why they hired Travis Green, but at least he'll have control of the locker room, hopefully, unlike the gong show that went on last year. But I don't know. I think they'll be more like the team from 2 years ago than they were last year, but I don't know. Like, if Norris is going to get a consistent role in the top six, I'm going to have a lot of head bashing. I'm going to throw my head through a wall a bunch during the season, breaking that down.
I certainly do look forward to those days. I obviously, anyone who's listened to the Morning Skate Pod for multiple years knows that DJ and I cannot quit Josh Norris, even when it's gone on for far too long now. I get the apprehension for sure, but I do think there's a ton of talent there that, and also, goal scoring. I don't think that there's a better goal scorer on the team than Josh Norris. We haven't seen it for a couple of years because shoulders absolutely suck. But I think it's there still personally. If my truth serum, I guess, is that I don't think he's done in this league.
Peterka, you must have been happy to see him on the top liner training.
Yeah, that's I think been largely what I've expected throughout the course of the offseason. What I'm most interested to see is the power play work that transpires. It does seem quite, reasonable that he's the guy who sort of replaces that Jeff Skinner role. Now, obviously, once Skinner sort of got banished to Siberia at the end of last season, he wasn't getting that power play one job anyway. So it was just a hodgepodge of idiots. Like Bo Byram was the Skinner role for a stretch where he wasn't even playing defense. He was just straight up the Jeff Skinner. It was strange. Peterka is a great player. I do think though that if the flip switches or if the switch flips and, all of a sudden it's Jack Quinn, in that role, they're basically interchangeable to me, but I just think it's far more likely that Peterka gets that role to start. And that Quinn sort of needs an injury to, really get there, just given the handedness of it all. Speaking of him, Dylan Cousins, he goes super late for a guy who's on his upward trajectory theoretically as a prospect wise, growth wise, who's already done it in this league from a fantasy standpoint. 2 years ago, he was great. How do you feel about Dylan Cousins this year? Because I've not been able to see it, but there's also, it's very clear that they like him on that left flank or on that right flank, despite being strong side there. So I'm a little, curious where he winds up, especially with the power play and all that.
Yeah, the power play is a big one, whether he's PP1 or not. I assume he is. Like, I think it's going to be the top line plus Cousins. What worries me is like, I am a big Jack Quinn guy too. Like, I think he is like future top line point producer type guy. If he's not fully recovered from last year, if something goes wrong again, they don't really have the wingers after Tuck and Peterka to support him, right? Like, there's just not, like, maybe Yuri Kulich.
So Zach Benson isn't going to be a fantasy guy, but he very well could be like, the lazy comp is the Mark Stone. He's not very fast. He's not very, but he's unbelievably, hockey sense gifted, talented, stick work, whatnot. I could see an argument that playing with guys like that actually are better than, the dominant puck guys, the puck dominant guys like Kulik and Quinn. But, I understand.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I like Benson too, but he's 19 years old. Like, at a certain point, like, if you want to get back to a 70-point season, like, you do need talent on the wings. That's the only thing I worry about is like, if Quinn isn't that guy right away this year, that's what I think will keep Cousins down, not necessarily Cousins' play itself.
Yeah, fair enough. We are 1 day into training camp and we've successfully avoided Jason Zucker top 6. So we've been marked safe from that so far. But that was a big fear of mine that we have all these obvious candidates and it's actually just going to be 35-year-old Jason Zucker, just stealing a job in there. The Andre Palat, if you will, from Lindy's Devils days.
I mean, there's lots of training camp left, right, Josh?
Not really for them. There's only 2 days until they head to Europe. So, until they start preseason games and then they head to Europe. So, I think this is what they're going to go with. They don't have the luxury of playing around like other teams do.
I think Buffalo's going to have a bounce back year. I had so many Buffalo futures last year and it was bad, but I mean, they didn't really stay healthy in the beginning of the year either. I think that's important for them. But, they gave up a lot of offense for defense. Maybe they get back to what they were doing a few years ago, and Tage has like 70 goals this season. I mean, obviously I'm being a bit facetious, but I could see him getting back to like that 45, 50 plateau.
I can't wait to see. I can't believe I'm actually saying this. What the San Jose lineup looks like when they start hitting the ice for preseason games and stuff. Because like all these San Jose San Jose guys are going pretty late, and the power play was actually good last year. You know what I mean? Like I was, and it's funny because I was actually just going through it today for my projections. Like San Jose's top power play unit was better than Montreal's. You know what I mean? Like, or on a per minute basis. So like if you can get Tyler Toffoli, like Toffoli just went 142, Celebrini still on the board. Lord knows who's going to run the power play. Like, is it going to be Jake Wallman? I don't know. Granlund's going to be going like considerably later, probably not even drafted in something like this. But like, I don't want to say I hate relying on San Jose Sharks players, but like I'm just intrigued by the value just because there's going to be so many guys available so late, and I think they're going to be terrible defensively. I don't think they're going to be that bad offensively.
I have a couple Shark stacks, and it is it's a concept of an idea.
Yeah, it's specifically here. So, there are other formats. I'm not sure if you guys, I can't play on Drafters Fantasy. but actually Ontario residents can, which is huge, I think, for hockey. But like Drafters has just a different format. It's full season and whatnot. I think in this type of a format where the ceiling matters so much, you can really only rely on Celebrini and Toffoli. But in other formats, like, I mean, if Michael Gramling plays 22 minutes a night and this team is competitive, he might have some fantasy chops because he was far from dead last year. And if, I can't see a world where, like you're saying, the power play could be any good. Is it really just going to be because they put Gramland out the pasture? I don't know. I have a hard time with that. So it's not super relevant here, but, yeah, there are things to like. I don't think I can get behind like a Will Smith just yet. I'm not sure he has a type of shot projection that we need on Underdog that really weighs shots heavily. But on more like point dependent formats, I do think that there's a real chance for Granlund to, put up that 50, 60 point year that everyone just goes, yeah, no shit. He's playing 23 minutes a night. Like, what were we supposed to do if the team was any good?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, just reading the comments here. What stops Toffoli from being Timo 2 to 4 years ago? Eric Carlson.
Yeah.
I
mean, Toffoli, he always ends up in the doghouse, no matter where he goes. He starts the season on the top line. He always ends up on the third line. He's always missing power play. If he ends up in there at the Sharks, like something went way wrong, but like he should be fine. And he should Timo is just like a cycle machine for San Jose. And they had Carlson, like you mentioned, like Foley's not really a cycle and grind type player like Timo is, but he is a good scorer. So
yeah, Toffoli's just going to be the guy that if Celebrini is truly of the level, to contribute in the NHL right away, it's more than likely going to be through Tyler Toffoli. Like, it's not going to be, Celebrini putting up a Bedard-like season where he's shooting, he's taking all the shots for his team. It's going to be more of a facilitating, I think, for Celebrini. And so that's why I think Toffoli is sort of the hinge point. If you take Toffoli, then sure, mix in Celebrini. I don't see the point of taking Celebrini here on this site in this, this ADP, whatever. I don't see the point of taking Celebrini if you don't already bet on Tyler Toffoli, given just how late Toffoli goes for a guy who right now is locked into line one power play one. Like, it's really hard to see a world where that doesn't stick throughout the year. Just given the lack of other talent on this team.
Yeah, like if he loses that role,
you have more problems than yeah.
I mean, it is the San Jose Sharks. Like, they could run into a lot of problems. So I guess we'll see. All right, not too many picks left. Three
rounds.
3 more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't play on drafters, but I do. I have played best ball on Fantrax before. I might get back there this season because I do have a couple season-long leagues on Fantrax, so I might just get to best ball over there at some point. But I mean, I do like the underdog format, especially where these drafts take less than an hour, right? As long as the lobby can fill on time, because during the day, you could end up waiting a little bit.
Yeah, that'll pick up dramatically these next couple weeks. Just the allure of the 25K top prize, people will click on it. It happens every year. It's only at whatever it is right now, 30% full. Like, people will click on it that final week. So, be ready to have some absolute lunatics in your lobbies that are just taking, 10 centers because they're just clicking the guy they've heard of. And, the centers tend to be the better picks here. I will say I will plug if you're new to Best Ball, Best Puck, I know you guys have plugged it before, but I wrote 3 beefy articles in the form of Mike Leone's Best Ball Manifesto. That's sort of like the football strategy guide over at Establish the Run. I did that on my newsletter for hockey. It's all free, so I highly urge you to check it out. Moods.beehive.com. If you've heard of the Beehive, blog platform, it's just there. But there's a lot of strategy points and elements that I think will just give you an edge out of the gate. That aren't that complex. I don't have a supercomputer when I'm drafting or anything like that. But like over the last 3 years, DJ and I have absolutely owned this contest, and we're donkeys. Like I just told you 30 minutes ago, I completely faded Nathan MacKinnon last year, who I calculated the expected value in if you pay $120, last year was $10 to enter. So if 12 teams enter the draft, Nathan MacKinnon took up $40 of that equity last year. And that's excluding the rake. It's insane how good he was. And I still managed to do really well in this contest because there are just so many strategy elements that people are just missing on every time out. So it's a really exciting opportunity, I think, in the space, and just it helps keep you in shape for the start of the regular season too. So there's my plug.
Cliffy dropped it in the link to Moods Manifesto in the chat. So if you've never checked it out, click on that and go check it out. I can't read, so I'm not going to check it out, but maybe when I learn, I will. It's probably why I can't copy and paste, but that's for another day.
Yeah, and if you're truly new to this and you have no idea what we're doing, I do link to something that Billy Jones did on Spike Week. That's like a super basic principles of drafting as well, like 3-7-3-3. If you don't know what that means, click that manifesto link, but it makes sense to actually read the sort of prerequisite before we start talking about like the basic strategies behind drafting.
I don't even know who I have on my team. I'm just kind of I was so tilted at my internet to start the show.
Well, let's do it again.
Might have to take Trouba to, fill out the Rangers stack. I will not be taking Jacob Trouba. I'll be taking Brett Burns.
Too bad it's not like the old FanDuel format where you got points for penalty minutes and stuff. Maybe Trouba would actually, be half decent.
I'm concerned about his minutes this year. Like him being a donkey, all like aside, like being terrible on defense. Like they've committed to putting him on the third pair with Zach Jones. That second pair is going to be Schneider and Miller now. So like, I don't think he's going to be playing those 23 minutes. He's going to be more like, he'll still find a way to get like 17, 18, 19 minutes, but it's not going to be like the 23, 24 he was playing last year. I say that now, and he's going to get like 25 a night, but like,
yeah, it's the Barney Simpsons meme where Mo throws him out of the bar, and he turns around and up there's Jacob Trouba. You're just going to be stuck with them.
He's going to get booed at home all season, which kind of sucks. Like he earned that no trade clause, so like he earned the right to use it.
He seems like such a good dude too, and just the on ice shit where he just wants to behead everyone he puts eyes on, and the fact that he just runs around like an idiot, as a result of it, like it just really sucks that his rep took such a hit because he does seem like a genuinely decent human with his priorities in order and everything else, and it just doesn't matter because he's so easy to hate for a lot of reasons.
He can't skate laterally. All he can do is go in a straight line.
I mean, I just do find it weird. Like he was like a good offensive play driver in Winnipeg, and he seemed to get away from that completely, at least over the last 2 or 3 years in New York. Like, I just don't know. It seems like a pretty wild switch of, play style at basically 30 years old or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they don't really need him for the offense now. Like, hopefully Keandre Miller takes a step offensively this season because he has all the tools. He's a big dude. He's fast. He's lengthy, so hopefully he, takes a step up.
See,
I'm kind of
Nichushkin just went. He's someone we're talking about. Like, just kind of reading between the lines from Jared Bednar and other quotes today, it looks like he will be back on the team when his suspension is up. Like, they're not going to be looking to trade him or cut his contract or whatever.
I mean, it's not like he, drove through his importance. So, like, he all he did was, he has a problem. He's getting the help.
Do we have confirmation though this isn't a Kuznetsov thing where like he needs to get out of there? Because that's my secondary concern. Where it's like this has happened twice now. Like if the team doesn't have a problem with it, like does he acknowledge that maybe a fresh start is he needs more time? Because isn't just November the minimum stay? Like he could be gone for longer. Do we have more confirmation on that? I guess is my question.
No, I haven't seen any.
Because this is largely extrapolation, but one of the things in Leone's manifesto for football is that just having predictable players in week 17 where all the money is really matters. Like knowing nothing else about the team that makes it. If you have 7 or 18 healthy players between your running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, you're just so much more likely to win. So like if Nichushkin's a 0 for the season, like that's just such a big risk to me. Given how small these rosters are and how freely available fantasy points are. Like, we're leaving power play 1, line 1 guys on the table at the end of drafts. Like, this isn't football where, it's between the 19th wide receiver for the Colts or the 7th wide receiver for the Broncos. Like, we're not doing things like that. So, like, can we stomach that 0 risk? That's my problem with Nichushkin. But, I get the upside case.
Luke Hughes this late seems half decent as long as he doesn't get Wally pipped.
Why does Eric Holla have an ADP? Probably because DJ wants to get like everybody possible.
No, someone took Holla at 2 in a draft this weekend. Someone in our Discord posted it. So yeah, thank you for. I hope Eric Howell's mom used promo code MSP when they signed up. That's all I'll say.
All right, draft is done. Moods went first. Matthews, then Saros and Connor, then Verhage and Tippett, and then Hamilton, Aho, and then Sam Montembeau. So getting Dougie Hamilton that late seems pretty good. Like, what's your read there? Because it does look like Hughes is going to miss the start of the season. Could he just straight up lose the power play 1 role? Or do you think that they force Hughes back in almost regardless of how the power play is doing once Hughes is healthy?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the reason that I think Dougie was going after guys like honestly Quinn Hughes, just because of his peripherals, Victor Hedman, Adam Fox, was because that power play job wasn't a certainty. Now for 3 months, 4 months, it seems like it's going to be a certainty. It's a shoulder for Luke Hughes, so I'm not that optimistic that he's back in any short order. And, yes, there's a risk that in February, they struggle for a week and they change it. I trust Sheldon Keefe too much sometimes with things like that. But I think if Dougie's performing, he's going to keep that job. So, yeah, I feel pretty good about getting Dougie there. It feels like he hasn't risen with the Luke Hughes news. It's impossible to know whether it's because the 3 of us, are the only people talking about this fucking sport. Or just, or that people just don't care about that tidbit. Like, it's whether, does it matter? Maybe. Do people know? Maybe. But it does feel like there's a lot of value in Dougie at the moment. So I would be happy to take him ahead of Hedman, Fox, Mackenzie Weegar. What the hell is Mackenzie Weegar doing here, guys? Like, it's drafting off of last year's results, I think. So that feels like, a pretty big edge right now with that Luke Hughes injury.
Yeah, like I think, like if we were told today Dougie Hamilton is power play 1 for the season, he's probably the 5th defenseman off the board, or should be.
I'm happily taking him ahead of Quinn Hughes. Yeah, Noah
yeah.
Dobson probably too. So yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah. So
Hughes, I'm going to have almost nothing of at his ADP. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't hit, he doesn't shoot. So like, yeah, he one of the best defensemen for actual hockey, but for this format, I don't. At his ADP, I'm not going to have any. I don't think.
He feels like Mackenzie Weegar with a solid role on a good team.
Yeah.
Like, why is he going after Mackenzie Weegar? I don't know.
Yeah. And then 3 of your last 6 picks: Dylan Genther, Sean Dursey, Nick Schmaltz. Purposeful late Utah stack there.
Yep. So Dylan Gunther's a guy who I think the world of. I love getting guys on the perimeter on the power play units, and Dylan Gunther has a huge prospect profile. He profiles as a shooter in the NHL, and he's shown up. He did it toward the end of last year. He was even getting like penalty kill time. Like I think Torini loves him there. I think the sky's the limit with him because Logan Cooley's probably only going to get better. And that he's already flashing usage in all situations on this team. So once I bet on Gunther, I did want more correlation on my team. You know, you look through the first 9 picks or so, and I didn't do a great job of just getting players that correlate well with one another. Overstacking is not good in this format. Like you don't want 5 players from a team. It's just I write about this in the manifesto, so I won't spend too much time on it. But like mini stacks are the name of the game here, where like they do provide value getting correlated teammates with one another. And so I tried to do that by getting Dursey and Schmaltz late. It's not necessarily that I think Gunther's going to play a ton with Nick Schmaltz, but like if the team is just better than expected, I think that those 2 guys could be on the power play. And so, you know, I'll just have that sort of build as like, you know, Utah's a playoff team. Guess what? That team's probably in pretty good shape because I have Austin Matthews, a stud defenseman, and 2 wingers in Gunther and Schmaltz who are part of a team that's just better than expected.
Yeah, I agree with the power play one. I was just, like I was saying earlier, I was doing power play projections today. I had Genther. It was Genther, Cooley, Keller, Schmaltz on the top power play, I believe. So, I mean, we'll see how that works out. But I do like sneaking in that late Utah stack. Let's see where Josh ended up. Kucherov, Hellebuck, Point. I mean, Kucherov, Point, I kind of like that stack. And then between them, Hellebuck, Skinner, 2 of your top 5 picks. Have you been doing that a lot lately?
I've been doing it more because the first few, which have really been like the first time I've done this, I was, you know, you get the first good goalie and you're like, oh, I'll come back later. And then you're picking between like Jonas Johansson and, you know, the Pepsi guy in section 309. So like you need like at least 2 competent goalies. I think, you know, Moods can speak to it better than I can, but the third one, I've been taking a lot of Wolf, but like Joey Decord is a starter. Like I don't want to be gambling on, you know, Pyotr Kochetkov getting 45 starts and Freddie Anderson getting 40 starts. You know, I want a guy who's going to get the lion's share, even if he's on a bad team. The reason I took Skinner now is because of the scoring. It's more FanDuel-esque than DraftKings. Like wins matter, and Edmonton should be a pretty good team. Sans Nurse, but you know what I mean. So like I try to get goalies relatively early.
Yeah, saying nothing about the goalies you selected. To you know, I think they're all very good. Structurally, it makes a ton of sense to either get basically at goalie. There's one rule. You can't get buried. You can't have, you know, a bottom, whatever. You can't have 3 goalies that say go after pick 100. You're just not going to get enough volume. You're not going to get enough quality weeks to compete. Whatever you do other than that in the data didn't really matter. Like you could take 2 goalies early and then a goalie late. You could take 3 goalies in the middle. You could take, you know, 1 early, 1 mid, 1 late. All that didn't matter, both in terms of regular season, you know, advancing out of your 2 of 12 pod here, or in the playoffs where, you know, the spike weeks matter. Basically, as long as you didn't lose goalie, you were fine. And you can see that sort of in the manifesto presented, you know, with graphs and whatnot showing like the expected value. But so I'm a big proponent of just getting goalies who I know are going to be there. Like I'm not interested in round 16 taking, bad goalies all that often. I did this time because, again, I got kind of frozen out of the goalies I wanted. And I wanted to get some correlation that I felt I needed for my high-end guys. And Nate Joss, for example, is a guy there who I was like, I need to correlate someone. But I'm a pretty big proponent of get goalies. It doesn't really matter when, just don't miss. And, that's something that I feel pretty good about. But ultimately, my rule of thumb, one of the top 5 or 2 in the top 100. If you do that, you're definitely fine no matter what else you do.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I do like the late round goalie idea, but I do think that's more of a season long fantasy than
Definitely.
a best ball thing, right? Because if Jonas Korpisalo did go, I think, in the last round of this draft or second to last round or something like that. Like if Swayman gets hurt, then you can go out and pick up Korpisalo in a season long league. Whereas, if Korpisalo doesn't get drafted, or like Detroit has like 5 goalies, like if Sebastian Casa ends up the starter by December, then nobody in this draft with a Detroit goalie will get any value. Whereas in a season long league, you just go and pick them up on waivers, right? So
I mean, Morning Skate Pod is famous. Goalies don't matter. And I know you guys do this too on your show for daily fantasy. Goalies don't matter on a night-to-night basis. You have no idea who's going to do well. The thing that for best ball, though, we have no waivers, we have no trades, we have no ability to control the goalies that are on our roster. So we need the guys who are going to get the starts. We need the guys who are going to get the chances. And so the best way to do that is to, again, lock in, that top 5 guy or 2 in the top 100. And that's a pretty good, indicator that you're going to succeed. And I think that's why the data bears out that as long as you just don't miss out on the locked in volume, that you're fine almost regardless of what you do. I'm especially now, especially these next 3 weeks, we're going to see guys like last year. Sam Montembeault is the guy who was on nobody's radar for the majority of the summer. And then all of a sudden in training camp, it was pretty clear that he and Jake Allen were 1A, 1B, and that maybe Montembeault was going to be the 1A if Allen got traded. So Montembeault became a sexy click that I like to pick, the last draft or so. It didn't really matter because he didn't do much in the playoff weeks. I think Primo stepped up at that point to sort of carry some of the load with him. But Montembeault had a great season and sort of was one of those guys who, you took them in the late rounds, not necessarily just because they were a late round goalie, but because there was actual news attached to them. That's what we're going to get for these next couple weeks here. And that's what's going to make it really exciting to sort of draft into camp news.
Yeah. And lots of camp news, like half the camp started today. I think the rest start tomorrow. Josh, you went Cutter Gauthier, Trevor Zegras. We were talking before we went on the air. It looks like Cutter Gauthier is going to be playing with Leo Carlson and Alex Killorn to start training camp. How do you feel about that?
You're talking to someone who has 41% Cutter Gauthier right now. So my bags are packed, like it or not. But ultimately, I love that. I think Leo Carlson's the exact sort of player who, ultimately will defer. Like he's just not going to do it himself. And I think Alex Killorn has some game. I also think that they're going to get the usage too. So if Cutter sticks with them, he's not getting, the 11, 12 minutes a night. That is certainly on the table for a player like him who is mostly all offense, given his profile. So, yeah, it's mostly bag defending, but I'm certainly here for Cutter Gauthier updates.
I mean, of all the landing spots he could have been, that's one of the best case scenarios, for him at the start of the game.
McTavish for Toronto, Gauthier, I don't think that sounds as good just because of the offense-defense misbalance there, but that was the other landing spot. Anything else was kind of like, is he with Zegras and Terry? I think those guys are getting frozen out personally. Now, maybe Zegras gets that last spot, but there's a lot of puck distributors on this team. I don't see any finishers. Troy Terry is not it. So that's why I'm betting on Cutter on a macro level. It's just I think that Cutter's shot is something that actually build around. Maybe I'm wrong. But nice to see that in his first prospect game, he had 5 shots and, was featured on the power play and everything else. Like, it's a prospects game, who cares? But, I like his odds to sort of be like that true high ceiling rookie that we don't often see in fantasy.
As long as he doesn't end up with Isaac Lundestrom, down at the bottom 6.
Exactly. That's the fear. So, but any of McTavish, Zegras, Carlson, if those are his centers, he's going to be kind of insulated offensively in a way that I think he'll be able to use his talents to produce in fantasy versus, you need a lot to go right personally for me, for Zegras to be scorable, just because he doesn't shoot that much. Like, you just need shots so much here. That maybe other category leagues, it makes more sense because, he truly could be like a 60 assist guy and you would not be surprised. But, with the cumulative scoring, with how heavy shots are weighted, I'm just going to a team that we have no confirmation on what the hell they're going to do. There's literally 9 guys who could be power play 1, including 3 defensemen. That I would just be like, so 9 plus 3, that's 12 guys. And it's like, yeah, he's power play 1. That makes sense. But I think Cutter feels like maybe the most likely given, the single skill he has, which is putting the damn puck in the net.
Yeah, someone on the power play has to shoot. Hopefully it's him. I'm with you. Like I really like his landing spot in Anaheim. Just quickly, I was trying to start Draisaitl, Hyman, Bouchard, and if Bouchard wasn't there for me in the 3rd round, I was going to go goalie anyway. So Draisaitl and Hyman was my 2-man. I feel like you said about Utah, even if Gunter and Schmaltz don't play at even strength, they will be on the power play. Like, that's the way I feel about the Edmonton guys. Like, I don't care which Edmonton guys I get. I just want 2 of the 5 from the power play. Mm-hmm. So, Timo Meier was a guy that I just wrote about last week at Elite Prospects Rinkside. I think he's going to be in for a much better season. Like, I really think it could be like 35 goals, 40 assists with over 3 shots and like 1.5 hits per game. Like, I think there's going to be more ice time for him, like upwards of 19 minutes, and playing with Hischier, playing top power play. We'll see. So my 2-man stack, Hyman and Draisaitl. I also got Matheson and Line A 2-man stack. Justin Falk. I'm not going to talk about my team very long, but Justin Falk, I want to get your thoughts on that St. Louis power play, because it looks like Buchnevich, Thomas, Kyrou, Neighbors is pretty set for the forwards.
I think it has to be set for Justin Falk too. What else? I mean, I guess Perunovich, but
Perunovich and now that Broberg's there, I guess, were the 2 guys.
I think Broberg improves the outlook for Falk, because I think Broberg makes it far less likely that Perunovich is in the lineup to begin with. Yeah. And secondary to that, Broberg is not going to steal Justin Falk's power play job. Like, I'm sorry, Justin Falk, I don't like him that much, but Broberg is not a guy who profiles to be a power play 1 guy. So I think it would be unexpected, honestly, for Justin Falk to be anything but power play 1. So yeah, I feel pretty good about him. He's not a super high upside guy, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just need to get scores at defense. A lot of it just will come down to if there's a week where, Matheson and whoever else you have a 2-game week, Justin Falk might have 4 games and, that 25 points will score. So he doesn't need to move mountains, but he'll get a score almost every week, given his rates, shots and blocks wise, and hits too. And with exposure to a power play 1, that's all you can ask for. So yeah, I really like Justin Falk late in drafts.
Yeah, that's just kind of my thing. Is like 14th round, he's power play 1. I'm assuming he's power play 1. He can put up over 2 shots and like 1.5 hits, 1.5 blocks per game, right? Like, at this point of the draft, like Drew Doughty went right before him. I was thinking of taking Doughty instead to pair him with Quentin Byfield. I probably should have. But I just have, like, now that we know Krug's out, I just have Falk so much higher than Doughty in my draft list. So, yeah, that's basically it. Oh, Michael Bunting, that's the last guy I want to talk about. Do you have any thoughts on what Pittsburgh's? Because it didn't seem like he's going to start in the top 6 this year, but I find that pretty hard to believe.
I think that the Malkin, Raquel, Bunting line will wind up together. We've seen it for years under Sullivan. They do this pairs thing where they have their pairs that they like. And maybe honestly, it could be Sid and Raquel and Malkin Rust. Some injuries last year, I think, made them swap things around late in the year. Also because they didn't make the playoffs with Sidney Crosby having just another stellar season, so they had to change some things around. But like, I'm not worried about what we see in camp for at least a week or so out of Pittsburgh. If we go a week without seeing Michael Bunting alongside Malkin or Sid, then I'll start to worry. But I think for now we're just sort of testing those pairings and just filtering in, young guys, unknown assets to see how they fare alongside their top 6.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to look at it. Like if we're back on the show here a week's time and Bunting still hasn't moved up, then I'll start panicking a little bit. But yeah that's a guy I'm pretty high on at this point in the draft.
There's a handful of guys just like that who I don't have a lot of that I kind of want to get more of. So, it's going to be interesting to see how I go. But like Ivan Barbashev feels very similar, just like locked in alongside Jack Eichel, probably power play 1 too. Would be very surprised if both those things didn't transpire. He doesn't get drafted anywhere, ever. Anthony Duclair, same kind of deal. He could very well overtake Kyle Palmieri for power play 1. They've already said he's starting the year with Horvat and Barzal, health willing. So I like that. There's lots of interesting guys late that I'm really tracking through training camp just to, make sure that those roles hold, because they're pretty valuable, I think, if those roles do hold.
Yeah. I guess we'll see how training camp goes. Hopefully no more injuries.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, another one in the books. What's this? Their 6th one?
Yeah. And then, I auto drafted one because I entered the wrong lobby. And then, I did a couple. Last week. I'll probably end up with around 20, 25 teams. I just don't have the time in the day. I don't have 87 hands like DJ has. I don't know. Every time he's in the lobby. But like, I actually was going into it going, I don't really like this. Now I'm kind of addicted to it and I just want to keep doing it. So like, I get the appeal. And business is going to pick up, like Mood said, like there's going to just be some absolute dong show lineups in the next few weeks when, because NFL, whatever is in season. And then you see, 40% full to a 20 grand top prize, like for $15, like someone will just throw $15 in to do it. And they're going to, auto draft Bo Horvat in the 6th round, like me. Or is that Brock Nelson? I probably auto drafted both, but like, you know what I mean? Like, hopefully this film, hopefully, I would imagine over the next few weeks, the wait times in the lobby are going to go way down and, can draft multiple times a day. So I am looking forward to that. I might end up with more than 20, 25 teams, but, I think I have 8 or 10 right now. But we'll be back next Wednesday. Appreciate Moods hopping on. Cliffy did put his manifesto in the chat, moods.beehive.com. You can check that out. Also, when DFS starts, I think you're doing some stuff now for the Morning Skate Pod, but I know for DFS, you guys are in the morning. We're at 2 p.m. Eastern. I know people are in both the chats trying to stir some drama last season. It doesn't really work. I don't have the brain capacity for that. So in one ear, out the other, we actually get along. So yeah. So people, this isn't like other DFS sports like NFL where touts like yell at each other. People who do hockey stuff, I mean, we could, but
Yeah, exactly.
I generally want to see more people doing hockey content because it helps in my brain grow the game. Whether DraftKings wants to oblige is another question, but
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about
Yeah.
we could talk about that forever. But I've actually been kind of impressed with DraftKings. I thought shit was going to get real bad after Ontario went dark. And last year we had quite literally the largest fantasy hockey contest ever on the site. They had that 200K to first contest. Like, they've been pushing it, at times. And to be frank, even Underdog, I don't know if they've pushed it as much as DraftKings has. So that's part of the reason I'm really excited by the Drafters contest, despite not being in a state where I can play in the US. Having access to Toronto could be a game changer. So, obviously play on Underdog. I did all my stuff for Underdog, so you should do that and play there. But if you're looking for more, or if you're in Ontario and for some reason watch this like an absolute sicko, there is a home for you over on Drafters too. So it is nice to see that there's and it's 10K to first over there. Last year it was like 1K to first and it filled in a day or whatever. But this year, it's 10K to first and it's still feeling like mad. So really cool to see. But anyway, the industry is not as bad off, I think, as I was thinking, 2 years ago when Ontario went dark for DFS. But yeah, when DFS kicks up, the Morning Skate Pod, Tuesdays and Thursdays, typically we record the night before, and then so it'll be up in the morning for you. Then tune into the Cliffy Josh show in the afternoon, and also the best puck streams that we do every Tuesday, just like this, DJ and I talking about the week's updates, this, that, the other thing, and drafting a team. So if you like this, check that out every Tuesday for the next couple weeks at least. And then obviously next summer as well. We'll do that pretty regularly on his YouTube channel, DJ Mitchell on YouTube. Just search Underdog Fantasy Hockey on YouTube. We're the only games in town, believe it or not. So it won't be hard to find.
Yeah, and lost my train of thought. Literally, it's too late for this old man. I am struggling, but yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I don't really want to get riled up about DraftKings in September, but like it's just their data that they say they have is just a crock. But like at times they do push the contest, so.
Come on, man. Just save this for January.
Yeah, I'm not going to slap myself. I'm not going to throw myself through a wall. This is a children's program. But Cliffy and I will be back next Wednesday. I think, like Mo just said, he'll have one with DJ on Tuesday. So if you're, for the 30 of you guys who are in the chat who are interested in best ball, there's content leading up to the season. Then DJ has his morning skate pod. He has his manifesto. We have our show. We have our Discords and yada, yada, yada. I'm just, we're ramping up to the season now. And then the long grind starts like once a week, twice a week right now is fine. But then going, 6 days a week. It's a grind.
Not long until we get there.
I don't mind. Yeah. I just ordered a couple pallets of energy drinks, so we're ready.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you, Moods, for joining. Sorry, the internet was a bit shabby in the beginning. I wanted to give you a proper intro, but, that's what happens when you live in rural New Jersey with Optimum, the worst provider of all time. You're probably watching this, and I'll probably never be able to stream again, but I appreciate you guys coming on, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Moods, and we'll see everybody next Wednesday.
Appreciate it, boys. See ya.